Okay guys, welcome back. Essentially now we are at the final stage that we are just gonna do some very minor housekeeping, and from the next tutorial we are just gonna see the beauty of multi-level Bayesian analysis, fully Bayesian analysis in standard. Okay, this tutorial is about some strategies that we're just gonna adopt in order to impute the missing values. However, I have written some codes. Let's find out where do we have the missing values. You remember at the previous tutorials, when we just did some kind of summary statistics of our data sets, we identified where the missing values are located. I'm just going to go back to that tutorial. You remember when we just did the summary of our data sets with respect to the different features that we had. We saw that, for example, on the MMSE, we have features, we have 2 missing values. At the SES, we have 19 missing values, and also these other things, which they are going to add up to, let's say, 21. However, right now, before we just move on to do some strategies to impute the missing values, by this line of code, I have calculated the total number of the missing values by that line, which is going to be the sum of the number of the missing values in my data sets. I'm just going to execute the line, and you will see that the missing total, if we just go back to, let's say, to the global environment, you see that the total missing value is going to be 21. And that's what we saw. We saw that it's going to be either at the SES, Social Economical Statutes feature, or MMSE. I'm just going to verify that. You see that for the missing value of the SSE feature, we have 19 missing values. And for the other one, you see that for the missing values of MMSE, with that code, we have 2 missing values, which if you add them together, you get 2 plus 19. It's going to equal to 21 missing values, which is going to be exactly the same thing as we got that from the first line, which is going to be the missing value total. You see 2 plus 19, it adds up to 21. And it means that we have taken care of, essentially identified all the features which they have missing values inside them. Okay, this line of code, I do not need that. I'm just going to erase it. Okay, and also the same thing, I do not need that. I'm just going to erase it because I'm just going to move on only for the missing values. In order to take care of the missing values, I'm just going to use a package, which is going to be a forest, which is a kind of an algorithm, very similar to the random forest, but essentially that's how it just imputes the missing value. It searches through the columns that they have, the missing features, tries to identify the existing pattern. If it excludes the missing value there, then imputes the missing values in a way that it does not distort the existing patterns if the missing values were excluded then. Okay, in order to do that, I'm just going to call the library for, let's say, the Miss Forest. And in order to run that, I'm just going to go ahead with the function Miss Forest. And you see that in order to do that, I have excluded 2 features. What is the combinations of -1, -2? If you just go back to the Datasets tab, if you open the Data tab, you see that we have the subject ID and the MRI ID, which they are going to be named the column number 1 and column number 2. When I come here, I get my datasets. And I combine color number 1 with color number 2 with 1 minus there, it means that it is taking, I should say, the datasets which excludes those features in my datasets. And you see that if I run it, you see that at the console, I have all the features from the group wizard all the way to the ASF, Atlas Scaling Factor, and it doesn't show the first 2 columns of my datasets, which they were subject ID and MRI ID. And also the maximum number of the iterations, it is designed, I put it as equal to 10, and the number of the trees which it goes penetrates inside, I should say, the data is going to be 30, and I'm just going to select that line of code and execute that by pressing Control Enter. And you see that when you execute that line, we have some problems. And the problem is that we just get an error message that it says that non-numeric argument to the binary operator. But what's the problem? Why we couldn't just take care of the missing values using the miss forest function? If I go back to the datasets that we had, you see that although we excluded the subject ID and MRI ID, the group level, which consists of 3 levels, non-demented, demented, and converted, they are non-numeric. And that's the thing. And that was the reason, on purpose, I didn't categorize this feature when I talked about the categorization methods at the previous tutorial, to just do that here. And you see that why do we have to categorize our data before jumping to taking care of the missing values. And now, in order to take care of this, it's going to be very easy, because I'm just going to simply come over here and just use this one as a line. I'm just going to go ahead, data, I'm just going to put the group, and I'm just going to use this time for the categorization. I'm just going to simply use the factor function. I'm just going to write the data. I'm just going to again select the group section there. And in order to do that, I know that I have 3 levels. My levels, I have 3 levels in my data sets. I can just combine them in 3 different groups. I have converted. The other one, let me just put that as a capital. I have converted. I have demented. And also the third level of the group 1 is going to be non-demented. Non-demented. It's going to be for this. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead. I'm just going to label them with the things which I decided to be. I'm just going to put them as a combination of some numbers. I'm just going to decide if they are converted to be shown as number 1, if they are demented to be shown by number 2, and if they are undemented to be shown by number 3. I'm just going to close the parentheses, and the line should be ready to be executed. I press Control Enter, and if I just go back to the data sets, you will see that the group features, the group column, shows just the numerical values, which is going to be 3, which represents, I should say, the non-demented, 2 represents the demented, and also 1 represents the converted. And that was the reason, on purpose, I didn't do the categorization of the group features on the previous tutorial. I kept it here to show that if you do not categorize your data sets, and if they are not numericals, I should say, then in that sense, you cannot take care of the missing values in your data sets. Okay. By doing that, I know I'm just going to rerun the program. Let me take this one, cut it, bring it back to this line, and now I'm just going to execute that line. And now when the execution is done, you can see that the data sets that we have just obtained here, it comes with 2, I should say, with 2 features. And that's the XIMP that we are looking for in order to extract the data, which I should say, the missing value has been taken care of. For example, now if I just come here and check that here, that if I just go ahead to check that if sum is an A, I just select that line and execute that code, you see that we get 0 number of the missing values. And that's the thing that we have to take care of when you just use the miss forest function in order to impute your missing values. You make sure that you just access your original data sets, which the missing value has been imputed by extracting that attribute of your data sets. However, in order to get everything back together, because you remember we just had to extract the subject ID and the MRI ID, I'm just going to take them back into our own data sets by using the combine function, cbind. I'm just going to first add the subject ID, then I'm just going to add the MRI ID, then I'm just going to sort out the columns based as what I want them to have in my data sets. And now if we just go back by this column again, from the data with its attribute as imp, I have the data itself again, and if you go back to check your data sets, you will see that the group has been, I should say, has numerical values, and also there is no missing values whatsoever in our data sets, which it means that now we took care of the missing values in our data sets, and the thing that we have to do right now is that, say, get ready for doing our first multi-level Bayesian analysis, which it comes at the next tutorial. I can't wait to see you at the next tutorial when we're just going to have some interesting and fun sessions with Stan in hierarchical Bayesian analysis. See you next time.